Hi, I'm Jeff Merrill from JMYS with my good friend, longtime friend, Steve D'Antonio. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Jeff.
We are in remote Montana at a private place with a lake behind us. We've been trying to get together to have a conversation, what we call a cruising conversation, for years. And whenever we're in the mainstream at a marina or a cove, we just can't figure out time to get together. We're up here in Montana and found a little bit of time to talk. So, Steve, we've probably met at Trawler Fest. I was trying to think about when we actually met, maybe 15 years ago?
Yeah, probably Trawler Fest. I can't remember where it was, Florida.
Yeah, there's been so many of them, but we were both speakers at Trawler Fest. I knew who Steve was because of his writing for Passage Maker magazine, which is, I'm going to go ahead and say legendary, just incredible articles. We've shared a number of clients over the years. I think the first client that we worked together with was a Nordhaven 68 new build.
Yes, I think you're right.
And at that point, you had not established the relationship that you now have, which is great with Nordhaven. You were a little more of a undercover kind of consultant. And but we built a fantastic boat that has done some amazing cruising. You now have a very successful consulting business. I would have to say that of all the people I know in the boating business, I don't know anybody smarter than Steve. And I don't say that just because he's here. I'd say that to anybody anywhere. Steve really knows everything about boats. Some of the things that he writes about, different language for me, and his knowledge of systems, how it all works, and his breadth of knowledge across the different brands, not just power boats. You do a lot of sailboats too.
Yep, I do.
So you have very high standards. You've created this wonderful consulting business. Before I forget, and before we go too late into this, why don't you give us your contact information? How do we get in touch with you?
So I have a website that is stevedmarine.com. There's email contact information on that as well, but that is steve@stevedmarine.com as well. And of course, you can do it the old-fashioned way and call our office phone, which is 804-776-0981. And let me just add, Jeff, you said I know everything, and that's far from the truth.
Well, you would say that, but as far as I'm concerned, you do. It's pretty amazing.
I learn new things every single day in this business. And I don't want that to ever stop.
Well, I think that's part of the fun of this business is we are working with clients who are realizing a long time obsession of getting a boat and going off cruising or selling their boat and having it inspected. And it's just a fantastic business that we're in because we're helping people with a lifestyle that they're really enjoying. It's their passion, happens to be our occupation. You have your daughter, Kadey, working in the office. So if you call in and you don't get Steve, you may be talking to Kadey. And just so you know, that is Steve's daughter. So I'm sure you'll be polite and friendly when you check in. I want to go back to some of your history of how you got started here, but let's talk about the services you offer right now. You have several different, call them products that you offer for people. Why don't you give us a little run through on some of that?
From the standpoint of sort of start to finish, I wanted to be able to offer boat buyers and boat owners a beginning to maybe end is not the best word, but from the standpoint of, hey, I'm thinking about buying a boat all the way through. I'm cruising and I need help, technical help while I'm doing that. Those products are starting with a program called Vessel Selection Assist.
Right.
And in that, it enables me to talk to clients about boats that they're considering, and that it has two options. One is Vessel Selection Assist Focus, and in that case, someone comes to me and says, "I want to buy a boat, but I have no idea what I want."
So you help them define how they're going to cruise, what kind of boat, their budget, what size, how many people, where they're cruising, that type of thing.
That one uses a detailed questionnaire that I give to them to fill out, and then with that, it helps me guide them into a more narrowly focused search.
Okay.
The other aspect of Vessel Selection Assist, or the other option, is what I call Vessel Selection Assist Evaluation, and that's when somebody has narrowed down their search to a type of boat or a particular boat, or maybe two or three examples of boats that they're interested in, and we can talk about those boats. And honestly, we can talk about anything boat-related that they want within the auspices of that program. Once we decide on a specific boat that they would like to own and make an offer on, I then offer a program called pre-purchase inspection.
Okay, so the first one is Vessel Assist, and there's a couple of versions there. How long does that usually take? Is that a one flat fee for a given amount of time? Or
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. all of my services are flat rated.
Okay.
I do nothing by the hour for a couple of reasons, but primarily because the value of the information that I provide has very little to do with the time it takes me to provide it. In a 10-minute conversation, I could potentially save a client thousands or
Tens of thousands of dollars, right? Yeah.
and I couldn't really charge for 10 minutes of discussion. They're paying for 30 plus years of experience. So I flat rate everything. And that also enables the client to know in advance how much
What's going to cost.
is going to cost, outside of expenses.
What's the average time frame for a vessel
Vessel
selection?
selection assists are typically 30 or 60 day
Okay.
periods. None of it's etched in stone.
Right.
And, some people say, I want to talk to you for, a week now, and then I'm going to come back, in 2 months after I've done some
Right. They might take a little break in it and learn more.
Yeah.
You get them pointed in the right direction.
I do. And that program, officially, it is 30 consecutive days. So, some people renew it, they talk for a while, then they go off and do their thing. They go to boat shows, they look at boats, they gather information, and then we do another, 30-day period, but it's entirely up to them, how they want to do that.
Okay.
So the next step along that path would be a pre-purchase inspection, and that would be an opportunity for me to thoroughly evaluate a boat that they are considering buying, one that they've potentially made an offer on and are going through the full process of sea trial, a survey, and my inspection. Which
and a haul out, right?
Haul out, short haul, all happens at roughly the same time. Those inspections for vessels up to about 65 or 70 feet require 2 full days. And as you said, they include a sea trial, a short haul, and then a very thorough dockside, what I call a static inspection of me just going through the boat, literally from stem to stern and covering all of the systems. With that program, I generate a very detailed written report that's prioritized.
500 pages long.
Well,
no, it's pretty. I've seen them. They're pretty impressive. Yeah. Very impressive.
The average one is 120 to 160 individual observations, all of different severities, and those are all detailed within the report. Photo documented, again, typically 500 to 700 photos total for an inspection like that, all of which the client gets. And I include estimated repair times for each one of my observations.
So that's great.
Enables the buyer to say, hey, here's how much time.
If I move forward, it's going to take me this long and probably cost this much money. Right. And most finance lenders and insurance underwriters do want to see a copy of a SAMS or NAMS surveyor. Steve's report, you have positioned yourselves really above the typical surveyor as an inspector. And have you been able to get some of the insurance people to use your report?
Well, let me just back up for a moment there. So I would say that what I do is different, much different than what a surveyor does.
Right.
A surveyor has certain goals, some of which are mandated by insurers and lenders. And that's, fully appreciated that they have that. I don't have that. I can do whatever I want essentially in my inspection and look at whatever I want and home in on things that I believe may be of particular concern, even if they have no bearing on the insurability or lendability of boat. So I have more latitude, let's just say. So I wouldn't necessarily say I'm above a surveyor. I'm different than what a surveyor
Right. Well, the surveyor needs to come up with a valuation for that. And most surveyors are not ABYC certified like you are. Take a second and talk about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd say.
But not with all the credentials you have.
Right. So many surveyors have A certification, and it's usually a broad certification in systems, for instance, or standards, which are 2 of the possible certifications. I'm more, being a gearhead and a former mechanic and electrician, I'm more of a hands-on person. So my certifications are more hands-on certifications in electrical, corrosion, diesel, and systems, and I communicate with ABYC in such a way that they consider me a technician, actually, because I'm actually putting my hands on this stuff,
right,
and evaluating it in a way that a surveyor probably isn't. And again, it varies from surveyor to surveyor. Again, some surveyors do have certifications. Most surveyors belong to ABYC, I would say. Which is important. But from the standpoint of lenders and insurers recognizing my report, that also is it's an important topic, because invariably many of my clients or potential clients say, why do I need a surveyor, Steve? I got you.
Right.
does the insurance company accept your report? And the short answer is some insurance companies and lenders will accept the report. That has become more common. However, I warn my clients and say, you probably don't want to give an insurance company my report because they're likely to say, fine, go ahead and fix it.
Yeah, fix everything on there. And some of the things are severe, need to fix now. Some of the things are you can get to it in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and it's invariably a long list, probably much longer than what a surveyor identifies, again, because they have different goals. But the insurers and lenders don't really understand that. They don't know that. So they're likely to say, do all the stuff on this.
Yeah, the surveyors and the diesel mechanics are really checking out the operational viability of the various components, because as a buyer, you look at a boat, you go through it, you decide you like it. I really recommend that you look at a boat before you do make an offer, but you don't know if the bow thruster works, if the windlass works, how the electronics work. And so that's where the surveyor, the diesel mechanic gets in there. Steve does beyond that. So you really, if you're going to use Steve in a pre-purchase survey, you're going to have your hull surveyor. Certainly recommend you have a diesel mechanic as well, and Steve, and you're going to be paying for a haul out at the yard. And so it all starts adding up. You really want to make sure that the boat you are having evaluated is a boat that you would like to buy. And when you get a report back, there is some ability to negotiate with the seller on fixing a few things. Oftentimes, most sellers are pretty conscientious of their boats, and they aren't aware of something that is discovered on a survey. And if they didn't sell it, or this deal didn't go together, they would need to fix these things for the next guy. So you've already got a guy who wants to buy, or a gal who wants to buy the boat. Why not fix this and come up with a fair resolution, some sort of an adjustment in the price, so that the new buyer can take care of those things? And does that, when somebody buys the boat and uses your inspection services, when does that program stop? They own it now, and they've got some repairs and estimates that you've suggested. Do you guide them along through that as well?
Well, let me expand on it just for a minute, if I could, because this is an important part of this service. When a client contacts me and says, Steve, I want your help in evaluating the vessel, a pre-purchase inspection, at that moment, as soon as they become a client, I'm now guiding them through that entire process, and I'm helping them task other experts that are involved, like surveyors and engine mechanics. So I will send them specific language to use in retaining or evaluating, or say, let's vetting the people that are going to be used to carry out the other parts of the survey. So the surveyor and the engine mechanic, as we all know, invariably they're not all created equal. And I tell clients, don't just hire somebody based on geography, because it's a guy who's available or gal who's available and in that area. What you really want to do is make sure they can do what we need them to do do a thorough evaluation. You get only one chance to do that in the survey before you actually buy.
It's an expensive chance. So you're helping the buyer interview, know what to ask for in hiring these people as well, which is a huge service, because a lot of people have had multiple boats and they kind of know, but there are plenty of people who, this sounds like a great idea. Let's buy a boat and go cruising.
Or they just say, doesn't the surveyor or engine surveyor know what to do?
There are assumptions.
They may, or it may be optional. And in many cases, I'll say, we need to have exhaust back pressure and crankcase pressure tested for with an engine surveyor. And the engine surveyor will say, well, if you want that, I can do. Do you want that? Oh, yeah, I'd like that. So it's often a conversation like that. But for people who haven't done this a lot, I'm there to help them sort of hold their hand through this process and say, here's what we need to find out. Here's the information we need for you to make a decision on who's going to be there and what they're going to do once they're there. And then once it's all happening, I'm on the boat. I'm, somewhat overseeing, in addition to my own tasks, I'm
keeping tabs on everybody else.
Sure that, those are getting done at the end of the day. And one of the, pieces of advice that I pass on to my clients is to say, you should be telling the surveyor, I want you to test everything on the boat, I want every light switch tested, I want the inverter tested, I want the crane tested.
Polarity on the outlets, right.
Yeah, and many surveyors will say, oh, if you want me to do that, I can. It may not be sort of de rigueur.
So much of this comes down to expectations and defining what is expected and what you're going to do.
Agreed.
So that is great.
So anyway, I digressed. I apologize, but I didn't want to gloss over that because it's important. So you asked, how long does that last? And so once we go through the survey/inspection process, the client, is probably doing some negotiation with the seller, and is free to communicate with me throughout that process. And that happens on a virtual weekly basis for me, where the client's saying, okay, Steve, I've got your report. How do I use it? And when I send the report to the client, I actually give them step-by-step instructions and say, here's the best way to get the most bang for your buck out of this. Don't just give the whole report to the seller, because they'll probably be overwhelmed and not really understand it or how you want to use it. Instead, here's the best way to take advantage of this. Once they do that, they get a response from the seller. They can share that with me for additional input and guidance.
You really are an advocate for your client.
And I'm not independent.
We're not picking sides here. You're just trying to do fair. And I would say that many things that are found on a survey were built incorrectly or installed incorrectly by the yard, which is really not the seller's responsibility or problem. But on the other hand, the buyer now is aware of this, and they're going to want to have that attended to. Some things are normal aging process. Batteries, for example, maybe last 5-6 years. And if they were installed 7 years ago, they might be working okay now, but that's just the life expectancy is very short on something like that.
So I work with them through that process. Once they own the boat, I make it clear to them that anything that's in that report that generates a question at any time during your ownership of that boat, it could be 3 years later, you're at a boat yard, you show that report to a technician, and they say, well, wait a minute, I don't understand, why Steve said that.
Yeah, so a 3 year later item, you're still available to talk with them about.
Now, if it's new stuff, of course, that's different, and I do have a program for that. But if it's related to the inspection, I say, there's no time limit on that. You can always ask me questions about it, or someone else can, at some point down the road, again, a technician that's on the boat or a boat yard that's doing work on it.
Right.
So once that program is done, many of my clients will say, hey, Steve, I'd like to be able to continue to communicate with you as technical challenges come up and I have questions.
Have you on call or retain you type? Is that the Captain's Club?
It's the Captain's Club. Right?
Okay, yeah.
So that's an annual membership that's unlimited. And so you could call or email me as often as you like. And it could be anything from, hey, my generator's overheating. I just dealt with one of those over the phone a few minutes before we started this, walking a boat owner through the troubleshooting steps for that. Or I'm in a boat yard and they're telling me I need a new propeller shaft and I just want a second opinion. I want to make sure that, what they're telling me is accurate and that they've done all the tests the way they should have. So it's a broad spectrum for cruising type questions, not, hey, I want to build a new boat and I want your guidance on it. That's a different program.
This is more owner-operator questions on how things are the equipment is working, and et cetera.
And so other programs that are related to this are refit assist. So if you're undergoing a repair, you're going to go into a boat yard, you're anticipating some repair or modification or upgrade or refit, and you want to be able to rely on me for help with that, a repower, for instance. I'll work with a client through that.
Well, and I'll give you an example. I have a listing right now on a Snowbird 73 that was built many years ago with a diesel electric propulsion package, and it just didn't work. And Steve was retained, and the boat was repowered, and that was a big project. So if you get into something that maybe is a little bit over what your comfort level is or over your head, Steve can come in and help you with these types of things.
Or if you want to back up, again, to the boat yard, not to say that they don't know what they're doing, but
second opinion.
Another set of eyes, a second opinion, different ideas on the way to go about a repair or a refit of that sort. Just briefly, other programs are, I do inspections on new boats on a regular basis. I call that a pre-acceptance inspection. Very similar to a pre-purchase inspection. So
someone has bought a new boat and it's completed and it's come in for commissioning?
Yeah, it's probably 90% of the way through commissioning.
Okay.
And they're ready to take possession of it, probably ready to make the last payment.
Before they make the last payment, you go through. It's sort of an early warranty call out, right? You're probably finding a few things that the builder's going to need to take care of on warranty.
And better builders actually appreciate that because they'd rather know about those things now rather than 6 months later after the boat is 1,000 miles away from their facility.
Yeah, it's easier to take care of it locally.
So that's a very common program that I use on a regular basis, or that my clients use. And then finally, I have a program for new building assist.
Right.
So for people who are building boats, I'll work with them through that, essentially if they'd like, from the drawing board stage before they sign any contracts, preferably, I work with them through evaluating the vessel, evaluating the specifications, probably looking at a similar vessel from that builder, if not the same model, so that we can
get on board and walk through and point out different things.
We might want to change or do differently.
Well, and equipment's always changing and getting better, and you're so tuned into all that with the way you work that if there's a better transformer or better inverter or something, you can recommend it. The boat builders have a set of specifications with standard equipment that they've based it on what they knew, but there's always new, better stuff coming along, and you can at least advise your client on those.
And that program could be anywhere from a year to 3 years, depending on the size and complexity and type of boat that's being built. It involves, again, the sort of remote assistance where I'm evaluating the boat on paper, looking at another example or an example built by the same builder, and then going to the yard during the build, often on several occasions. And again, when the boat is nearly complete, to do an evaluation, inspection, sea trials, and then a final inspection before the owner takes possession of the boat when commissioning is nearly complete or complete.
This business has really grown since I knew Steve. How long has SDMC been going? Have you 15 years now? Or?
I started it in the end of 2007. So
Okay.
yeah, nearly 15 years.
Right. And you do new build construction. I would say the popular brands would be Nordhaven, Fleming, Grand Banks and Palm Beach. You've done Kadey-Krogen. What other? Bearing?
Others.
Yeah.
Yep, a variety of different brands, and nearly all of those include travel to the yards wherever those may be. So Taiwan, China, Malaysia, Europe, Turkey, Italy.
And the client can join you on those trips.
And I encourage them to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's pretty cool to see your boat being built and have Steve there to point out different things. And you might see other boats on the line, maybe get an idea. Sometimes it's too late to make changes, but you can just see what's going on there. You do a lot of traveling.
I do. I'm a 2 million miler on Delta and counting, but I average about 200,000 miles a year. Again, a lot of travel to Asia, that adds up.
You, during the pandemic, so we're recording this on what was kind of a lovely, I'm hearing thunder in the background, early August date in 2021. So we have been through at least one round of the COVID-19 pandemic, not saying it's ever over. But you were grounded for a while.
I actually wasn't. I mean, I traveled through much of 2020 because I didn't know where. I don't have the luxury of working from home. I can do some stuff from home, but I've got to go to the boats to do my work. And as long as my clients were willing to pay me to do that, I was going to do it. So I flew. I drove in many cases when flights became erratic. But as we both know, this industry has been extremely busy.
Right. Yeah, it's been really busy. Well, you live in the Virginia area right now, and so you would drive down to Fort Lauderdale. I remember you telling me one time we were talking about something that you went to Taiwan, I believe it was, and you had to hole up in a hotel.
I did. So I did a trip to Taiwan to do inspections on 2 boats that were being completed at the same builder, both for clients, and they each wanted a pre-shipping inspection on those boats. And in order to do that, I had to quarantine upon arrival in Taiwan for 2 weeks. So that was
You're in a hotel for 2 weeks.
Hotel room for 2 weeks.
I mean, you couldn't leave it.
Nope. So nice thing to be able to say you did, but not want to do it again.
During it, it's not very nice.
It was not bad. Taiwan is wonderful, with really wonderful, gracious people. I love Taiwan. And so if I had to do that anywhere, Taiwan.
You are very pro Taiwan. You really have enjoyed vacationing there. I mean, out of business trip, you'll out on a couple of days and go.
I do. I like exploring. I have a lot of respect for Taiwanese boat builders and Taiwanese craftsmanship in general. They're very diligent, hardworking people.
Their attitude and their can-do. They are very receptive to learning and making things better and wanting to know.
And I would say the same is true of China as well. I've spent a great deal of time in China, working with boat builders there. They're, again, hardworking, diligent. If you show them how you want something done, you'll get it that way.
Right.
And so I feel like a little bit of an ambassador for Asian countries in some ways, because the perception that many American boat owners or buyers have of Asian-built boats is often incorrect. And
Well, maybe that could be another program you offer to various foreign governments about it as a tourism guide. Well, you have many talents. I'm going to go ahead and say that. And one of them is your photography. You really do a great job. You have these giant cameras with lenses that go on like elephant's trunks, and you carry them around. But you also really love birds. I mean, you shoot a lot of boat stuff. But tell me how you got involved in photography and what your thinking is when you do that type of
yeah, I mean, like a lot of things about my career, it was an accident. When I first started writing, over 25 years ago, when I became a technical journalist for the industry, I realized very quickly that in order to make my articles work, I needed photos that no one else had. I mean, I had to be the one to document what I was writing about. So other authors can send an article to a magazine. The magazine gets the photos to go with it, and that was not the case for me because my subject matter was so unique. So I invested in a fairly good quality SLR camera, and it went downhill from there.
This is using film before digital.
Yes, slide film back then.
Getting your aperture and your white balance and all that.
It was old school, but it was all we had.
I like automatic on my camera. I'm using my phone now mostly. But
I probably have my slide library is probably 100,000 slides.
Wow.
Which I still have. I've scanned many of them.
Yeah.
I haven't had the heart to toss them. Of course, when that went digital, that changed things dramatically and has made life more easier, certainly, especially for traveling. But being able to share photos, almost instantly, for technical purposes, that's also changed that landscape quite a bit. But yeah, photography is a passion. Wildlife photography, scenic photography, birds especially.
Maybe you can send me a couple of those and we can put it in this video. I would like to mention, as we are well aware, it is starting to rain just a little bit. Not a problem yet, but we may abruptly end this and run for cover at some point. You've mentioned writing. I know you, and that's really, I think, how I was first aware of you with your writing for Passage Maker magazine. You attribute that back to one of your mentors, don't you?
Yeah. Again, by accident, I encountered a person who has been a longtime friend I've known for over 25 years, Ralph Naranjo, who was a journalist, who is still a journalist, but at the time was a technical editor for a magazine. And prior to this, I had worked at a boatyard that he managed, so we knew each other. And I bumped into him at a boat show, and he said, I'd like you to write an article on marine electrical systems. Have it to me in a month. And I didn't want to disappoint him, and say no. So I mumbled through an answer and agreed to do it, and struggled through that first article.
This was for Cruising World, I think?
Yep,
so,
yep.
okay, the sailing, but primarily sailing, yeah.
And sent it to him, and he sent it back with a bunch of red ink. And I wrote it again, and we did that a few times until it was publishable. And that was literally more than 1,000 articles ago. I mean, I've written well over 1,000 articles in that.
You have a lot of them linked on your website as well, don't you?
I do, many, yes.
So I know you're very active in the Nordhaven Owners Group and the Nordhaven Dreamers, where people have questions, and you and Bob Center, who's another good friend of both of ours, really help people out a lot. Those are fantastic, and many of your responses will link to various articles on your website. Now, you also have an e-newsletter.
I do.
How do you sign up for that?
Yeah, it's on the website. There's a box where you can put your email address in to receive a notification each time one of those comes out. They ideally come out twice a month. When I'm really busy, that might get stretched out a bit. Like Kadey, in our office, she manages all that. I provide her with material. And it is a feature article once a month, and then 2 weeks later we do an Ask Steve column and a photo essay. So I'll write a few hundred words about a particular photo of something technical, and then answer reader questions, 4 or 5 reader questions as well. And anybody's free to.
Yeah, I look forward to getting those. There's always something interesting and informative, and that's where I get back to. Maybe not the smartest, but one of the smartest and knows most of everything, maybe not everything type of guy. There's so much to boating. And you find out a lot of things. There's some pretty classic statements from the Nordhaven world, and that is that you learn about your boat one breakdown at a time. And I think that's very true. Bruce Kessler, who was a very good friend of mine, would always, whenever there was a problem on the boat, try to find out where everybody last was and see if maybe somebody bumped into a breaker switch or did something wrong that created the current problem. Well, I think the rain is coming down a little bit more now. Why don't we take a little break? Maybe we should go do a little bit of tubing on the river and then come back for more of this conversation.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Steve. Hey, great to be underway again out on the water. Love it out here. Thank you very much for watching the video. We have a couple of things you can do. One thing is you can click the bell to get a reminder when we post the next video. We love it when you give us those thumbs up. And then you can subscribe by clicking the button below. Once you've seen a couple videos, you might also want to check out some of the other ones, so you can click on one of these videos on the side. Thanks. We hope to have you come back here soon, and we'll be putting up more content shortly.